I'd like to start my presentation. Just a moment. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. So I apologize because it's actually somehow did not end up to be on the first page, but we will fix this momentarily. So as noted, I am honored to be one of the guest contributors to the book that is co-authored by Dmitry Kaminskiy and Margarita Colangelo. Dmitry truly has been also an inspiration for me as one of the pioneers really and leaders in the longevity industry, and I'm very glad that I made a switch from corporate law into longevity industry, which is a very impactful field that in fact affects the entire humanity for the best. Because the book is titled Longevity Industry, and I will be using this term a lot, I think it will be helpful if I first start by defining how do we view longevity, because these days it's a very hyped word and many people mean different things by that. For us, it means something very simple. It's living healthier for longer within currently known human lifespan. Some of you may have heard that Dmitry established a $1 million prize a few years back to a person who lives up to the age of 123 years, because the current record held by Jean Kalman is 122 years. I'm not sure how healthy was she during the last decades of her life, but she currently holds the official record of lifespan. So our objective is actually to live healthier for much longer within that lifespan. The other popular term for that is health span. Another important aspect is that how we view longevity industry, because I think it helps us really stand out compared to other longevity focused funds. Number one, we view longevity industry as comprising of four major sectors. One is a classic one, it's geoscience R&D, it's rejuvenation biotechnology, geoprotectors, gene therapy, regenerative medicine, and so on. So that is a classic. Another sector that has to do with medicine is the so-called P4 medicine. It's personalized diagnostics, prognostics, etc. So we're big believers in preventive medicine, when you can apply cutting-edge bioscience in order to either prevent certain health conditions from happening or at least maintain it. We're also big believers in precision medicine and applying AI to precision medicine data, especially if it comes not only from older and sicker people, but younger and healthier. And then two other sectors that we focus on, I think, are actually something that distinguishes us even more, because they have nothing to do with science and medicine per se. One of such sectors is age-tech, and it has to do with improving lives of currently living older people, and there's actually about 1 billion of them globally. So it's you could call it a seventh continent, and I have a slide on that later. And life improvement happens by virtue of things like cognitive enhancement, think lumosity, entertainment for older people, continuing education, FinTech for the elderly, and the like. And then finally, the fourth sector is the so-called longevity financial industry, because we cannot really ignore the fact that if we live healthier for longer, that inevitably will affect our financial planning, right? Because insurance companies and pension funds have certain assumptions of human lifespan. And thanks to advancements in medicine, humans started living longer, and such players as pension funds, insurance companies, and so on are basing their payout structures based on assumptions of human lifespan. So they need to embrace this new reality. In terms of investing within the longevity industry, we are focusing on 10 sectors. The biggest portions of our investment fund will go to geoscience R&D and P4 medicine, but also 8 other factors include longevity FinTech, neurotech, biomarkers of longevity, age-tech, AI for longevity, regenerative medicine, longevity femtech, and even advanced cosmetics, which I'm sure both of us can appreciate very much. Also, we think it's extremely important to address the issue of longevity on the government level. We've been publishing our analytical reports since approximately 2015, so we're definitely amongst the pioneers, and these reports are open access. We really want to make a global impact in terms of changing the focus from sick care to preventive care. And as part of that initiative, we've produced several reports. One of them that you can see here is the Global Longevity Governance Landscape, when essentially we analyzed 50 countries in terms of their longevity effectiveness and factors that we included. I mean, actually there were 200 parameters, but if we have to sum them up, there are such factors as economy, politics, environment, healthcare, and then there's a bunch of other subsectors that are involved and measured. And based on that, we rank the countries and also provide certain recommendations based on the existing situation. We are proud to actually be on the forefront of global longevity movement on the global level. We are amongst the co-founders of the all-party parliamentary group in UK Parliament. Here you could see Dmitry and a few of our colleagues on the launch date, which was May 7th, 2019, when Dmitry and Aging Analytics Agency, which is in our portfolio, started that group. And we're very pleased to see that in the United Kingdom, the government actually views longevity as a very important objective, and they committed to extending lifespan and hopefully health span as well by at least 5 years. It's a government initiative. Unfortunately, we cannot see this, the picture of the next slide. Actually, I'm sorry, get fixed. We also are focusing on many regions in our effort, including the United States. Last year, we were honored to present our report at the Methodicity Conference. And this report was devoted to a regional study in the United States, which analyzed health outcomes in the United States compared to other countries. It's probably not a big surprise, but despite the fact that the United States spend the most on healthcare, which is close to 20% GDP, unfortunately, they cannot boast neither the longest lifespan nor health span. In this diagram, you could see the leaders in life expectancy, but then more importantly, US really lags behind developed countries in terms of health span. So comparatively speaking, health span is essentially how many disease-free years do you have at the end of your life. So I think this chart sums it up pretty well, because compared to Singapore, which is definitely amongst the leaders in longevity of its citizens, while spending only 4.5% of GDP, the comparison here is such that not only Singaporean citizens live much longer, which is 82 years versus 78.5 in the United States, but their health span is much longer as well. So United States, essentially, the last 10 years of person's life is sick care versus 6.7 years in Singapore, which is pretty significant. We've also, I don't have time to elaborate on this much, but we always make recommendations to various governments, including the United States. And again, this is open access. We're very happy to contribute to this global effort, and including our expertise in open access. And we've developed a tentative plan and suggestions of what can be done now to improve the situation in the United States. Also, both of us being Californians, I would like to touch upon the open access report that we published last year. If anything, it was my first analytical report effort that I've led. And it was devoted to longevity industry in California. So what we've done is, it was our first regional study in the United States, because we've done ones on Singapore, Switzerland, UK, Israel, and a number of others. So California, as we know, is definitely is one of the innovation capitals of the world, as we know, if not the, depending on whom you ask. So what we've done, we've analyzed all of the top players in the field of longevity. So we've highlighted companies, investors, research labs, nonprofits, as well as governmental organizations that focus on longevity. And again, longevity, this is health and health span, right? So anything to do with health. So we've profiled these companies. This is, again, open access. There's also an interactive mind map that accompanies the report, so you can go and play and say, hey, who's working on age tech or neurotech or regenerative medicine? And it's actually a very cool way to visualize the report. So in terms of companies that work in the sphere, we've also segmented them according to our vision of longevity industry. So let's say if someone is only interested in age tech, they can see companies in that sector only. So I think it's pretty helpful. And then this is just a brief comparison of California versus the rest of the world in terms of the key players. And then I would like to briefly touch upon the so-called longevity hype in Silicon Valley. As we all know, and I'm anxiously awaiting, Google promised us to solve the problem of death in 2013. And unfortunately, this has not yet been the case. However, we definitely observed great successes in significant lifespan expansions of model organisms, such as the worms' C. elegans lifespan was extended by 500%. Mice lifespans were expanded by 24%. So there's definitely advances there. But here's the problem. So whilst, of course, it's important to do scientific research, we cannot ignore the fact that men are not mice. Okay? There's a huge issue of transferability of even successful clinical results into human clinical trials. If anything, there's a staggering failure rate of over 90%. So obviously it's not working perfectly. There's also the so-called replication crisis, when even successful experiments cannot always be replicated. And our position is that to remedy that, the article that you see here, I highly recommend to read. It's in Science in February of this year. So the points I'm making are derived from there. Basically, there is a huge discrepancy in complexity and regulation between model organisms and humans. And system biology and machine learning need to be used to translate relationship across species. And the conclusion is that instead of humanizing animal models, greater success will come from humanizing computational models derived from animal experiments. So key conclusions on California is such that, yes, obviously it is a very important region in science, including longevity. However, there are many other regions globally that focus on longevity as well. And their focus is not just biomedicine and model organism or so-called R&D moonshots. So I've mentioned the importance of age tech, the P4 medicine. So it's a very important factor to consider. Also, our position is that I would say such overexcitement about successes in extension of lifespans of model organisms, if anything, creates this hype, because you can be very excited that the worm will live 500% longer, but then what does it mean to us? And so basically, this in turn can lead to investments in companies that follow that model, and then huge disappointments when there's corresponding results do not translate into humans, and that in turn can essentially create the nuclear winter in the longevity industry as a whole, because you would say, hey, like these guys did not really achieve anything as it applies to humans. So there are a few aspects I would also like to mention in terms of what can we actually do in terms of human life extension, right? Because that's very important, and we don't see much progress yet, unfortunately. So here our view is that there are 4 pillars of life extension research. Pillar 1 is classic. It's it's the so-called experiments with model organisms. There is great success there, as we see, but again, there is an issue of transferability. Then there's pillar 2, which is so-called biohacking and quantified self. This is the opposite, because these are people who are applying cutting-edge, therapies to not all of them being FDA approved, to actually experiment with themselves at their own risk and try to extend their lifespan. Then there's pillar 3, which is age-related diseases. and it's doing very well because we see advancements here in terms of including treatment of cancer. There's age-related diseases are a huge factor for economy, and they warrant large government funding which they receive. And we've seen several successes over the past few years. And thankfully, we also see a tendency when the focus is being shifted from treating the age-related disease as an end result, but actually also focusing on preventive measures, which is very important. And then finally, pillar 4 is AI, data science, and mathematical technologies for longevity. Personally, we think this pillar holds the greatest promise. And also simultaneously, it is probably one of the pillars that is very much under the radar, and this needs to be changed because we cannot ignore the fact that biology of aging is an extremely complex process, right? So there's a huge amount of data, and therefore it's extremely important, number one, to generate and analyze this data to get started, but also it can produce new net positive results. So our position is that that pillar, that the longevity research with respect to pillar 4 will be more of a data generation problem and it's aggregation generation and analysis versus anything else. So in terms of prognosis with respect to each pillar, we expect that experiments with model organisms will continue to succeed, and we sincerely hope that they will successfully translate into human trials as well. Biohackers will continue doing their thing, and of course there will be more advanced technologies coming up. Age-related diseases obviously are doing very well right now, and we see no reason why advancements will not continue. And again, I said the greatest promise we believe lays in AI. And we are hoping to contribute to that pillar and encourage others because this is where we see the greatest promise is. Okay, and then lastly, I would touch upon age tech because here we really do not need to reinvent the wheel, right? So older people, live here now. There's 1 billion of them in retirement globally. So essentially, here it visualizes that it could be one separate continent. And their life can be improved right now. We don't need to reinvent the wheel whatsoever. My mom is in the age group, and I've seen her life really improved by technology. Not maybe on the biological or medicine level, but definitely on a personal level. Because here you can, as I said, address loneliness and a few other issues. What you see on this slide is our upcoming open access analytical report devoted to UK age tech ecosystem because UK is amongst the pioneers in that field. And you're welcome to examine it once it comes about because it summarizes all the key players in the industry. We also have further analysis that provides various summaries on the ecosystem, R&D landscape and related issues. And there's also a corresponding platform. So with that, I will finish my brief or not so brief introduction.